You're too clever for me, Bob. You and your father were made off the same block.
That's the only way to keep your head above water in the business world, Gus.
Yeah, I know. Dog eat dog, and may the bigger dog win.
You know, that reminds me of the Anderson deal I pulled off. It started out when Greg Anderson was trying to...
Before you get into that, Bob, how about me treating you to a second round of drinks?
I can't say that I mind. The generous soul waxes fat. I always say the generous soul waxes fat. Remember that, Gus?
Yeah, I remember that. And with some of our fat waxing around, I was wondering if you'd like to do me a favor.
Drink first?
Sure. Waiter.
Yes, sir.
Could we have 2 more of the same, please, waiter?
Of course, sir.
You see, Bob, my nephew Bert just got out of college. I think he's just the stuff you need over there at Blackman's.
You mean you think we ought to give him a job?
Well, I don't see why you shouldn't. As much business as I shove your way.
What kind of experience does the kid have?
He's my nephew. That ought to be enough.
Well, we could put him in somewhere, in the stockroom, or...
Oh, no. You ought to have something better than that lying around. Why not just give him a little position somewhere, say some minor executive, you know, something to keep him out of trouble.
Well, no harm in doing a friend a favor. That's the way I feel about it. There's no harm in doing a friend a favor. After all, a friend's nephew, why, who can you help out?
The issue of impartiality has raged in controversy over the face of the 20th century. National, political, racial, and religious groups have demanded equal rights before the law in governments of country after country. Protest marches, demonstrations, law cases in courts are all due to the desire for equal standing, for getting jobs, for getting ahead. That men would be treated equally under the law with no partiality for position or wealth was a Bible principle given over 3,000 years ago. This principle is still valid, as 2 businessmen will have to learn today.
Mr. Blackman, this is the 4th time in a month that we haven't delivered cotton stalks on time to Weiss Industrials.
Well, what happened?
I don't know, sir. Somebody just forgot to have the truck sent out.
How could anybody forget to send the truck out?
Well, it's the new man we've got, sir.
The new man? You mean Bert Peterson, Gus Peterson's nephew?
That's right, sir.
But that's Peterson's nephew. How could he not have any business sense in his head?
I don't know, sir. It just seems he forgot all about the shipment. He was busy.
It's impossible to forget 5,000 pounds of cotton sitting in front of your desk, Miss Roberts. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. Give me that boy in here.
Yes, sir.
And in addition, Miss Roberts, you can get his last paycheck ready.
But, Mr. Blackman, we can't do that.
Nobody tells the Blackmans how to run their business.
But that's Gus Peterson's nephew, the Gus Peterson. If Mr. Peterson finds out you fired his nephew, I'd sure hate to be in your shoes.
Well, on second thought, you're right. Maybe I'd better come up with another ID.
You are very good at that, sir. Just like your father.
Let me see. I know. I'm going to call Harry Goodman over at Goodman Printing. I'm sure he could use a bright young man in his staff who's got executive experience with Blackman's Incorporated.
Do you want to take the phone on 57, Joe?
Sure, who is it?
Bob Blackman, Jr.
Oh, yes, I wonder what he wants. Hello, Summers here, Bob. How are you?
Haven't seen you for a while. How have you been?
Oh, pretty well. Yourself?
About the same, thanks. But let me get down to business. I didn't call to waste your time talking about health and weather. That's not the Blackman way. That's just not the Blackman way.
All right, I understand.
I wanted to talk to Mr. Goodman, first of all, but...
Yes, he's on vacation for the week.
So I suppose that you're running the place for him?
Well, we're trying to make sure everything keeps moving.
Well, I thought I might be able to help you make it run better. Mind if I stop over to see you?
Well...
Good. I'll see you in half an hour.
I wonder what that's all about.
That's right. We have a young man over here working for our company right now who's got a lot of potential. Just out of school, executive ability, experience.
But why tell me all this if he's already working for you?
The thing is this, we're trying to trim things around here, and the way Dad and I feel, well, we hate to see a good man wasted.
Well, why trim him then?
It's not just a matter of him, Joe. I just heard you might be in the market for some good executive material. I just thought I'd do a helpful, kindly, neighborly thing. Give you a lead on somebody. You know, that's how Blackman's does business. The neighborly, kindly way.
Oh, no doubt. But I don't know if we can just hire for the sake of kindliness or friendship.
You could if you knew that this was Bert Peterson.
Who's Bert Peterson?
None other than Gus Peterson's own nephew.
You mean that you want us to hire Gus Peterson's nephew, not an executive?
But Gus Peterson's a big man around town, Joe. If he wants you to hire his nephew, it's a good idea to hire his nephew.
Well, I wouldn't say that we would hire him or we wouldn't hire him. Harry Goodman has to make the final decision.
But everyone knows he leans on your advice.
Well, I know that Harry likes to be very careful in hiring executive material.
That's what Gus's nephew is.
Well, why don't we wait till Harry gets back and...
Well, I only wanted to let you know. Don't blame me if you have any trouble from Gus Peterson when he hears about it.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Don't worry, Joe. You'll find out soon enough. So long.
Was there any trouble, Joe?
No trouble. I guess Harry can take care of it when he gets back from vacation next week. I've got to get back out to the plant.
Mr. Summers, Joe Summers to the front office, please.
I wonder what that's all about, anyway.
No need to go out to the front office, Summers. I'm the one you're supposed to see.
Well, Gus Peterson, won't you sit down?
You're not going to get me to sit down in this office or anywhere else, Summers. Not till we get squared away about Bert Peterson.
I don't understand.
Don't tell me you don't understand. Blackman Jr. here told me the whole story.
The whole story about what?
About how you've been looking for a manager and how you refused to hire my nephew Bert just because he was my nephew.
Now look, Gus, in the first place...
Don't try to get out of it, Joe. We know what you're up to. No sense in covering up. That's what Dad always says. No sense in covering up.
Shut up, you and your father.
Only trying to make the point, Mr. Peterson. Dad and I always...
All right, Joe. What's going on?
I don't know what Bob Blackman has told you, Gus. All I know is he called up this morning trying to get us to hire your nephew. And I told him that Harry doesn't hire people he doesn't know anything about.
Knowing that he's my nephew ought to be enough.
Now, Gus, just because he's related to you doesn't make him a better worker than anybody else.
You don't even know what the kid is like.
No, I don't.
And you don't want to find out either.
Look, Gus, I'm going to talk to you straight.
No, I'll talk to you straight, Joe. All he's doing is looking for an honest break in the world. He's worked hard for 4 years in school, and the least you can do for him is to show him the same courtesy that Blackman is.
Well, why doesn't the boy come here and ask for a job interview like anyone else? We'd try to give him a fair, impartial treatment.
Why should he have to? In this town, the name Peterson ought to be good enough to hire him.
You know, Gus, you don't hire people just because they've got a certain name, or their blood flows a certain way, or their genes resemble somebody else's genes. You hire a man because he's qualified and because it's going to be in the best interests of your business.
Well, isn't that what we're offering you?
I don't think so. Now, there's a principle in law about that.
Yeah, I know there's all kinds of laws about hiring people.
Yes, but this is for me the highest kind of law, because it has to do with a law that God gave, not about hiring people, but treating all men with impartiality.
Don't pull God into this arrangement. It only makes it messy.
All right, Joe, let's hear your law.
Now, you're a very wealthy man, Gus. You own a lot of property, and you have anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 people working for you.
That's right, and I worked for every last penny of it.
Now, I'm not arguing that. All I'm saying is I believe in what's just. Now, that was exactly what God told his own people when he was giving them a law centuries ago. It was in the Bible, in Leviticus chapter 19 and verse 15.
That's not law. That's Bible.
Well, perhaps I should have referred to it as statutes instead of chapters and verses.
Let him talk, Blackman. You got us into this.
It said, you must not treat the lowly with partiality, and you must not prefer the person of a great one. With justice, you should judge your associate. Now, Gus, you're a very wealthy man. Your nephew carries your name and what it stands for. But should I give him preferential treatment only for that?
It's just a favor.
Now, suppose I asked you to hire my son, just as a favor, or anybody else for that matter.
I'd probably do it.
And make him an executive to run some part of your business for you?
Well, I'd have to see how the kid worked out first. You know you just can't hire him blindly like that, Joe. I mean, it's your son and all, but...
Well, wasn't your nephew working for Blackman's first?
That's right, but as I explained to you, Joe, the boy shows a kind of ability that could go into heavier industries, like printing with Goodman's, for example. After all, we deal mainly in straight consumer products at Blackman's, not the kind of things that would really be for this boy.
You see? You hear it right in your own ears. He's qualified.
Well, that's not the point at all, Gus. Qualification or no qualification, the Scripture said that you do not treat the lowly one with partiality or prefer the person of a great one. You deal in justice. If he is qualified, nephew or no nephew, then perhaps if there was a place in our organization, we could hire him. If he weren't qualified, then we don't hire him. It's a principle that the Bible gives of impartiality in all our dealings with people. Now, let me just ask you another question, Gus. If your nephew is so qualified, why don't you hire him yourself?
Look, I only asked a favor.
That is a point, Mr. Peterson. Why don't you hire him?
Well, I don't want him to get ahead because of me. If he's working in my company, you know, people will probably give him preferential treatment, saying he's Mr. Peterson's nephew.
Now, isn't that the same thing you're asking for here? You go out to get him a job, ask special attention to be given to him. And your main argument is still, he's my nephew. Now, if you wouldn't do it in your own company, why would you want Goodman Printing to do it?
I can see we're getting nowhere here, Mr. Peterson.
You know, Joe, every time I've dealt with you, you've always stood up for principle. You're a rare breed of man, Joe.
I don't see that.
That's why you hired my nephew without knowing anything about him, because you don't see the kind of principle Summers has.
You mean quoting the Bible?
I mean living the Bible.
Well, I try to.
Listen, Joe, Blackman and I'll have to work this out between us. Meanwhile, I want you to know I agreed with your principle before I even knew it was in the Bible. Now, that's one thing that has always impressed me about Joe Summers. He's honest. He says what he thinks.
Well, honesty is the best policy, Mr. Peterson. Honesty is the best policy.
Be real, Blackman. No businessman in his right mind calls honesty the best policy anymore.
It's not necessarily dishonesty, Mr. Peterson. It might merely be the way it's explained.
And that's what happened with my nephew, wasn't it? Tell me the truth. You said he was executive and he was green clear through. Where's your fabled Blackman honesty, boy?
You be honest with yourself, Gus. The only reason we took him was he was your nephew. Remember Summers' speech on partiality?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm the one who preached an equal chance for every man. But it took a Bible verse over 3,000 years old to make me see that I could be partial without my knowing it.
You didn't have to bring the Bible into the partiality business.
That's another piece of impartiality, Bob. Open-mindedness. Being open-minded is part of being impartial. Maybe you and I could both do better in being impartial when someone like Summers uses the Bible.
The field of impartiality is as big and as broad as the human race itself. Perhaps all men could learn it a little better if we could learn to believe in and apply just the simple precepts of the Bible.
The program, All Scripture is Beneficial, is produced by the Watchtower Society and presented by Jehovah's Witnesses.